welcome. And it's a case of welcome after a brief break. We weren't here last week, but we are here. We, as in myself, Ade Darami, your host, and my colleague, Mohamed Mbodj, co-host. Mr. Mbodj, as ever, welcome to the program. And as I said, we skipped 1 week.
Absolutely, through no fault of ours.
No fault. Technical difficulties.
Technical, the gremlins, as it were.
Gremlins.
That's it, yeah. We're back.
We're back. And also back is Lamindi Sonko doing the signing. And I'm talking about we being back and so on. You might be watching this for the first time, so you've probably never seen the show. Well, it's called The Week in Review for a very good reason. We take 10 stories from the week just gone by that we think deserve kicking around a bit and discussing them in some detail. So what have we got on the menu, I hear you ask? Well, there's a huge roads project going on right now. And the Minister for Transport and Works, or Works and Transport, has been going around looking at these projects and keeping an eye on them. And also, Ministry of Health, they're on a big catch-up campaign, as they call it, on vaccination. And also, I'm always banging on about cleanliness and sanitation. And I'm glad to see that the Kanifing Municipal Council are on a big, what they call a sanity drive. And also we've got SGBV, training of trainers for female police officers. Also Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, their withdrawal from ECOWAS has finally been made formal by both sides, them and ECOWAS. We'll look into that. And also AFCON. Remember AFCON? Well, they've just done the draw. And of course we're not there, but we still will pay attention to it. So these are some of the stories. So let's get things off and running. So I mentioned that the Works Minister is on a tour looking at various projects around the country, road building projects, some of them quite impressive. Have a look and have a listen.
Well, the total project is 102 kilometers distributed among 12 roads. And at the moment, they are working on all 11 roads, and it's only one road that they haven't started working on.
We also want to do the best in the Gambia. We will give the Gambia good road quality.
For many in the region, the road represents more than just a path to connect one place to another. It is a lifeline to opportunity. Osman Sanyang, Managing Director of the National Roads Authority, further expands on the significance of this mega project.
This is in Kiankabada, so it's south of the South Bank Road. But if you want to look at it, if you want to think about it, it's like a South Bank bypass within Kiang. So this is connecting up to Japine. If you cross it South Soma going towards Basse, it's connecting at Japine.
The government sees the Kiankabada roads as a key milestone in its vision of national development.
National development, Mr. Mbodj, our colleague there, Osman Jatta. We could have chosen one of a dozen, but he came back the night after the tour finished, reporting back at how impressed he was with what people were saying about the change that these roads were going to make. And people talking about, it's always about infrastructure. Well, there's a reason, isn't there?
Absolutely. Perhaps the only sort of quibble, if you like, I have is that when we use the word development, it's quite dense, isn't it? There's so much in it. So, of course, road construction absolutely is just one aspect of it. So one prefers to just call it road construction, to just stick to it without sort of using this sort of term with a broader really, meaning. Of course, one of the distinguishing features of Barrows Rain is really the infrastructure, roads. Absolutely, and here, especially the ones being built in the rural areas, is a kind of corrective, perhaps to decades of neglect. And yes, these days we're talking about connectivity. Well, having the road that connects, isn't it?
That road that we looked at,
absolutely,
20
other villages, isn't it? And the roads, that sort of thing, towards schools, healthcare centers, and
Just for those plying the road
markets also
kind of
use-
commercially,
Absolutely.
it's better to run on a good road than a
Yeah.
bad road, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And even one of the interviewees in the story said that, imagine at night your wife is about to deliver, you have to take the donkey cart and
bumpy
all
road.
the attendant risks, taking that. Now with the proper road, you can get a car, get there quicker.
Yeah.
Time as well, as they say.
Which leads to the other thing you mentioned about development. Yes, we've got roads, but as you mentioned, even if the roads are good, that person might still need a donkey cart to go. It doesn't mean all of a sudden they've got an ambulance.
Absolutely.
They have to use a donkey cart. So there are other elements. It's one element, and it's a significant one rather, obviously. But it is just one element of, as you say, development.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
we've mentioned it because the connectivity to schools,
yeah, schools,
these
yeah.
services, that's one.
Yeah.
Healthcare centers,
Yeah.
vibrant markets to
Well,
show
well-
that the economy is doing well, to markets.
In fact, when
People and goods. So,
Yeah.
really, I'm not sure what one can say.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one area, really.
Yeah.
His most implacable detractors
Yeah,
would
quite.
accept that, yes,
Yes.
he's really building roads. It's just as afterwards you'll hear the
What
but.
next?
Yes, but, yes,
What
but,
next?
yes, but.
Yeah, quite. Well, that's-
that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we talked about when I discussed this as the story was playing, and this very discussion broke out in the office. And I said the one thing they haven't mentioned is things like the fire services and emergency services having to get to a particular area. If they have good roads, it means they can get there quicker and possibly save lives. So there's so many elements to it. Yeah.
That's it. How many times have you heard
Done
incidents?
stories where
incidents where there's fire somewhere, but again, the roads are so bad.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
fire services find it hard to access.
They can't even get to the
They
property
can't get
because
to
the
the
roads are
property.
bad, or they can't find it, and
They
so
can
on.
find
So
it.
yeah.
You don't have street names, as it were.
Yeah.
So this is it. But on the face of it,
Yeah.
what can you say?
Yeah.
But, bravo.
Bravo, and keep building.
One wonders just for how long, because we didn't say much about whether are you on track. When is the deadline?
Well, they did
They
say,
did.
because some of them they had expected to finish before independence, because that was like the big thing, and they'd missed that deadline. And there were a couple that they said were actually going to make it before the 18th of February, but only a couple. But because it's such a wide-ranging thing, there's a possibility that they kind of overreach themselves to put that as a target, because it's a kind of pluck from the air target. Okay, it would be great for the Diamond Jubilee to have these completed, but was that reasonable? Was that sensible?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, when did they begin? That's it. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But fine.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens, because as you rightly say, people are saying, we've got the roads, what next?
Yeah.
And so what next is
And
the
I
big
think
question.
I heard electricity. They were talking about
Well,
electricity.
that's right,
but
yes,
these are
yes.
the key things. Earlier
Yeah.
we mentioned school health centers, but
Yeah,
again,
sure.
the water, electricity, this sort of stuff that would
Quite.
sort of make people feel reasonably comfortable.
Well, that's
a
right.
decent
Yes.
life standard.
Yeah,
as
they're
it
not
were,
asking for
isn't it?
luxuries.
No, not asking for
decent
luxuries.
roads, electricity,
Just
good
basic
water.
stuff to
Yeah,
have, to have a good base
Yeah.
from which perhaps more creative ones could become whatever.
Yeah, quite.
Just have the health, the education, and all the rest of it. You just never know what can emerge
This
from
is it.
anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I totally agree with you on that. So yes, we'll keep an eye on these ones and see what what next is. Thank you, Mr. Amboj. Story number 2, Ministry of Health on a big, what they call a catch-up vaccination campaign. What are they catching up with? This report will tell you.
We have been having very good immunization coverages, but when COVID struck in the year 2020, we had a decline in the immunization coverage due to the lockdown and the fact that many of our caregivers were afraid to go out and then approach vaccination. And because of that, it created an immunity gap in the population, and that has increased the risk of outbreak.
The vaccines that would be given to children range from polio vaccines, which is there to prevent the polio virus. Polio being one of the diseases that definitely lead to paralysis of the limbs, which is a childhood disease, and then it's one of the diseases that we are fighting as far as the vaccination effort is concerned. Another disease that we are targeting or we are trying to prevent with this vaccination is measles. Measles is a childhood disease that definitely is very deadly, and then the fatality rate, although we may not say it has a fatality rate that is high, and then it's one of the diseases that are targeted for in this campaign.
Vaccinations, you and I and people of our age and even slightly younger, we remember them quite routinely. As we heard in that particular story, COVID-19 came, and because people weren't moving around, they couldn't move around and vaccinate. But it also brought with it something else, the kind of what we kept hearing about vaccine hesitancy. Because people were saying, well, how could they have found a vaccine so quickly for this? And then it just kind of spiraled out of control after that. So now, as the campaign is called, this is the big catch-up.
Absolutely.
Children up to 6 years.
Close the immunity gap, as he called it there.
Yeah.
So that's it. So essentially those born since, what, 2019?
2019.
Yes, and this is a country, sort of, one of the interviewees there said that we've had EPI since 1979.
Yeah, 1979.
And we've always had high coverages. That sort of thing, really. So the 2020 COVID brought in
it
something
brought
else.
this
So
complication.
The complication, there was the physical lockdown and the fear, the caregivers, we said in our report, were scared to go out and meet people to vaccinate them and all the rest of it.
That's right.
So now that's it. The vaccine hesitancy, as you said, we were worried. We thought, okay, what effect will the COVID experience have on other vaccinations? One was quite worried. But from what we're hearing so far, there's some willingness. You've got this rear guard, sort of conspiracy theories, but generally, there's been some willingness.
There is, I think, and part of that is, I think, is based on the fact that these are vaccines that had been given before. They're not new ones. They're not the kind of COVID-19 vaccine. I mean, we had some colleagues in our office who completely refused to take the vaccine, COVID-19. So it's not, that's kind of sort of random thing. But also, as I said, polio and measles and so on, these are ones that have been routinely given for decades, and they've had no problems with it. You still have some people in the Western world who have formed these kind of organizations against having their children vaccinated. But generally, most of us have kind of gone along with it and seen the benefits of it.
Absolutely, and we've seen something else as well. Remember the doctor who was discouraging people from taking the MMR.
That's who I was thinking of.
Yes, so some people actually did listen to him, but afterwards, because this was done some time back, we had the time to evaluate the damage.
That's right.
People could see the damage that advice had done. So this is it. That is why sometimes you would expect your government where people are reluctant. And it is a public health risk.
Well, I was going to say, because
that element comes in,
close to us, I mean, the example that people are now using is in northern Nigeria, and also farther afield in Afghanistan, where they refuse to have people take the polio vaccine. And now, sadly, 5-7 years down the line, they're now reaping the dreadful consequences of that. And so they've been using that as a kind of example for the rest of Africa. Say, look, this is what happened in northern Nigeria, where these people said, we won't have our children vaccinated. And now the rates there of things like polio and measles way higher than anywhere else in the country.
That's it. So this is the problem that government leaders that really would face. Sometimes you will have a segment of your population perhaps really vocal, advocating something that your wisdom, your experience, that's why you were a leader, tells you that that's possibly wrong. You really cannot be a follower. You cannot follow them. So these are some of the tough decisions we take because of the consequences really on broader society. So this is it. So hopefully with this one they will hit their target. It's a target, isn't it?
Of course.
So hopefully by the time they are done, it's what, 10 days?
10 days.
Yep.
10 days.
By the time they're done, hopefully they would have.
That's right.
They will have hit the target.
Children from 0 to 6 years. I presume 0 means newly born to 6 years. But yes, we hope they will hit that target. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Ambrose. And now story number 3. Again, I mentioned that, I'm always banging on about, sanitation, waste management and so on. And our friends at KMC have also gone, not just sanitation, but they call it Operation Sanity. What's it all about? Have a look and have a listen to this.
We have 4 units that involved. That is the municipal police as the enforcement body, the anti-terror unit. We have the cleansing service. You see the big truck at the back. and we also have the community service. The council provide all the logistics that we need. We have almost 23 big compactor truck. The first week of operation, when we do that in around Old Joshua constituency, then cleansing service will make a major follow-up general settlement in every constituency after operation.
And there are other consequences that we also go back again. We will go back to Joshua again to see whether compliance has been done.
We've heard this before. They'll go back to Old Joshua again to see whether compliance, because that has been the problem, isn't it, Mr. Mboj? We come with all these things, they look good, they look great, photo opportunity, the media are there, and then boom, you go back a month or two later and the place looks like it had never been cleaned. So this is the thing. Now they're calling it Operation Sanity. They're trying to either restore or impose sanity. I'm not sure what. I'm not sure whether there ever was sanity. So maybe it's impose it rather than restore it. But this is they've got their work cut out based on what we see, haven't they?
Absolutely. I love the name with its echoes of sanitary.
Exactly.
That's one.
Yeah.
And the other bit, what an insane situation this is existing right now. Let's try to change it. Let's restore sanity.
There are so many things.
Sanitary habits.
Sanitary habits, sanitation,
Absolutely,
you know, the whole,
sorts.
and the insanity, of course, that they're trying to address and correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is really where the problem is.
Mm-mm.
The people, it's us, isn't it?
It's us.
So you
It's us.
find that you will have to periodically be doing this, as it were. Whereas if you have the habit of providing bins, we make sure that we put our stuff in there, and then what doesn't say that you wouldn't have people throwing things, even in the West. After a weekend, you come to the city center, you see the council, you know, they're cleaning stuff.
Cleaning
Absolutely.
overnight.
So this is it. There's something that the council can do, as it were, daily. For instance, you will have to clear the bins, as it were,
of course.
that sort of thing. But when you have a population, us, we're just used to throwing things on the floor. And that is really extremely, extremely difficult. You really cannot enforce law without the general consent.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because this campaign, they've said, is about enforcing the anti-littering laws. The laws are there, they're on the books, but nobody gives a damn or pays any attention to them. And this is about, but it's not easy to enforce things like anti-littering laws unless the penalties are really stiff.
That's it. And you know what you're going to get? And you'll have a few victims,
go on.
but the application wouldn't be uniform. It is not, you cannot do that. It is not going to be fair. It was when they were sort of enforcing the anti-smoking laws, going to all restaurants and Kololi. One of them said to me, these people are unfair. The only reason why they come to me is because I'm visible. Because this law, when you go into Kololi, so many places, they are also selling, but they wouldn't go there. So uneven applications, that's really what we're going to come and get. Really. So if you want to enforce regulation, we should think about the institutional arrangements in place that would make sure and ensure that you have effective enforcement. You know what I mean?
And compliance.
That's it. A longer term, a sustainable. Yes, it must be sustainable. I am not so sure whether this model that we have in the longer term, whether it can last.
Well, this is it.
I'm not sure whether it's got the gas.
Because they're going to come back, as he says, they'll go back and visit again. So I guess if they then, because they're going along with the police, and we heard the guy there, that's when the kind of enforcement bit comes in. You know, we were here last month, we told you about this, you didn't clear it, so now, boom, we hit you with a, I don't know, $500 fine. I mean, the law is quite weak on that, so it's not going to break anybody, the fines that already exist. So maybe that's why people do it.
Absolutely. So this is really the issue. There must be general consent among people that we cannot do that.
This is for the public good.
This is for the public
it's for our
good.
health, it's for everything else.
Otherwise, the scale, really, of the task they have is huge. You know what I mean? And now when I look at some of these kids, they do it. You know? They just eat ice cream, eat whatever, and they just throw it on the floor.
I see it every
One
day.
would have thought that that sort of thing would have been handled at school, to
yeah.
make them aware.
Yeah.
You see, just create the awareness that you shouldn't do that.
Quite.
And then sort of you perhaps can even create something very interesting amongst groups. If one does it, another one among the group will tell them, no, you shouldn't do that.
Yes, exactly.
But once it's
Yeah, yeah.
normalized, you can have 4 kids together, 4 or 5. One does it, nobody says a word.
We've all seen
Because
it.
it's normalized.
normalized,
You want a situation where, at least if one does it, another one within the group will say, no, you shouldn't do that.
Quite.
So there's really somewhere that we can start to tackle this, that, we can measure. In a few years' time, you'll see a difference.
Sure.
But so far, what they see, they're just appealing to our moral sentiment.
yeah,
That doesn't
quite.
work
It's
when
not
it comes to
gonna
public policy. You want a proper public policy, not appealing to people's moral sense.
Sure.
That sort of thing has never worked. Moral sense is not public policy, sir.
I think, again, another one that we'll be watching with an eagle eye to see when they go back in Old Joshua, and it will be spotless, and we'll be like, wow,
You
how
see,
did that happen?
stuff like that.
But
That's
I
really
suspect
the
not.
issue.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
suspect
I
not.
keep thinking, imagine if you had a soap.
Yeah,
You
quite.
see, soap really reflects the society on TV. You know,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
a lot
quite,
of
yeah,
people
quite,
watch.
yeah.
So these are some of the areas,
Yeah.
where you can handle,
Yeah.
as it were, where you can tackle, as it were, people's attitudes.
Yeah, yeah.
So you give them
And-
back a
and-
mirror,
And there
then
are
it
some,
helps.
Yeah, there are some that
Absolutely.
have been used in other countries, and they've been highly effective.
Highly, that's it.
Effective. So,
If
yeah,
you
yeah.
want social change, but
Yeah,
we've
quite.
not been
Yeah.
going that
Yeah,
route.
quite.
But to change people, you have to change the stories.
Well, this is it.
We are not changing the stories.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. In case anybody's interested, I did write one such soap when I came to the Gambia, but nobody took it up. But and it's about that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now on to story number 4, sexual and gender-based violence training of trainers. Well, not just for anybody. This is for female police officers. We had quite a discussion about this in the office. Have a look and have a listen, and you might understand why.
The training is part of the Play to Empower initiative by Girls Pride, a woman-led community-based organization. This initiative uses game-based learning to educate law enforcement officers about sexual and gender-based violence through the Fune board game. The game covers sensitive topics such as sexual and gender-based violence and menstrual hygiene management. Commissioner Mustafa Ndong emphasizes the potential impact of this training.
First of all, I wish to say that this is all part of the SSR, the National Security Sector Reform the Gambia government is pursuing. And SSR, one thing that is fundamental is that the objective is to kind of create a reorientation for security services, for the personnel that are serving in the various services. That is the primary objective of the SSR, because we know we emerge from a situation, and to be able to serve adequately in the current dispensation, there is a need for reorientation.
Reorientation, Mr. Mboj. Part of the discussion that was had in the office, I think you probably weren't paying attention to it, or because it was kind of around your desk, but it was about the one police officer who, was filmed doing something quite disgusting to a young girl. And I was trying to say to our colleague that actually this is not, you can't extrapolate from that all male police officers are like that. Yes, it was serious enough to get that person dismissed, but this was 19 female police officers who were being trained because, as they said, most of the victims of sexual and gender-based violence are women, and they feel more comfortable speaking to another woman. So this is why this was particularly targeting them.
That's it, and I think all the countries around the world, I think they do that sort of thing. Is
that's
they
right.
train females, in
sure.
different capacities to handle that. That's absolutely true. So this is it. Yes, one police officer does it, and then they want to tarnish
All the
whole.
male police officers.
But
yeah.
we know the difficulties in that
Yeah.
kind of thinking. I don't really. I give it short shrift.
Yeah, absolutely.
in many ways, because it's
Absolutely.
completely thoughtless. So this is, for me, the worrying statistic that Jennifer right for us in that story was what the increase in gender-based violence from what 2013 41%, 46% 2020.
Yeah.
One would have thought that perhaps the trajectory
would have been
the other
going
way
down.
around.
Yeah,
It's going down. So perhaps the message is not quite getting through. And the FGM, 73% of women between what 15 to 49, 15 to 49, doing this. Yes, that one as well. You know what we are, what we are
dealing
against.
with. Yeah,
that's it.
Quite.
Yeah. So the training, obviously, very good, but always it goes back to how do you implement.
Well, this is it, because we're talking here about training police officers,
Yes.
and that would be mainly about dealing with people who are already victims.
Yes.
How do we stop people being victims is probably the most important thing. Yes, it's important enough that if you are a victim, you need to be able to feel confident about the person to whom you are reporting, i.e. a police officer. But really the big elephant in the room is not training police officers, it's the society. How do we curb this within the society? Really?
That's it, just as you said there, after the fact, after the deed, that's really where they come in. But the more sinister, the more insidious bit would be where the girl is scared to go out. So you've got years, as it were, of abuse or whatever. But again, who would notice? Who would say it? So in other countries, you have Department of Social Services.
That's right.
You have well-trained people who might notice things.
And to whom you can report.
And to whom you can report. So here again, you ask, if this is what outcome, this is the kind of outcome I want, so what institutional framework must I have in place to give me really what I want? And it has to work competent.
Because the police one is just one aspect of it.
It's just one aspect of it.
What about the care and the psychological help and so on for somebody who is a victim of this?
That's it.
What about that?
And how would they work with the Ministry of Gender, Children
and Social Welfare?
And social welfare. So you need a well-coordinated machinery, if you like, in place to really help reduce this. Really, the numbers should be going down, really not going
but depressingly, they're going up.
Depressingly so. We would have thought that sort of we are moving away from certain conventional views about gender, as it were, to a more enlightened, as it were, future. Oh, certainly, people have to think that.
It's scary. We had a discussion about marital rape in the office, and sad to say, some men found it a ridiculous concept, and that tells you a lot. It speaks volumes.
Absolutely. This is the key. With these things, how do you change them? There are different levels of dealing with them. We talked about the institutional aspect, but there's also the community.
Yeah, quite.
And the household, even, and the leadership being provided. You know what I mean? Are we really committed to really changing the balance, as it were, the male-female balance, really? We were not even sure outwardly when we organize, what do you call it, when we organize these workshops and trainings and stuff, what we profess. Yet I see in the office, for instance, when we talk to people who are in their 20s and their 30s, and they sound so conservative.
Exactly.
I am much older, but it seems as if I'm perhaps more progressive than some of these kids. So the worldview. It's really very, very important, because without that change of worldview, the change of mindset, some things will be extremely difficult really to fight, to combat, isn't it?
But I think this one is, with no pun intended, the struggle continues. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj.
And at least there's a kickback. We're training, we're doing things.
We're doing
that is the key. Do things, perhaps, and cumulatively, they could add up too much.
Yeah, quite.
You just don't want to whistle in the wind or something.
No, quite.
That's the key.
Yeah, thank you. And story number 5, a very different story. Recently, the Q Group Foundation held a ceremony where they presented 20 scholarships to students, which is up from 10 from the previous year. But there was an interesting comment that our chairman, Q Group CEO, Mohamed Jah, said, and we thought this deserved kind of comment on its own, and so we took it out as a separate story. Here's some of what he had to say.
We would like to collaborate with the ministry in transforming education and teaching in this country. We know that digital education is the way to go. One maths teacher can lecture a whole, maybe, a whole classroom of different schools at the same time. This is the way to go. We travel all over the world, we see that digital education is the way. But for us to be able to achieve these goals, we must have public-private partnership. The government cannot just do it alone. We should be able to have internet all over the country, connectivity. For you to be able to do digital education, you have to have connectivity.
You have to have connectivity, to echo the words of our chairman there, Mr. Mboj. But there's a broader concept, which is the public-private partnership. And I know this has become a kind of favorite phrase in the Gambia, government cannot do it alone, but this really is a case that if we want this, then you have to have outside actors get involved with the government, be it the private sector and international and aid, if we want to transform education in the country, really, which is what he's talking about, a kind of transformative action where, you digitize things. Yeah.
And in every area, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We know that it is untenable, otherwise your structures, your system would be obsolete.
Yeah, quite.
So we really have no
And look at the way now
choice.
when we send money routinely, electronically, we don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to physically go and give somebody money. My uncle lives in Basse and I'm in Banjo. I can just send him, Q money or whatever, and seconds later, the money is there. It's in your hand. And so we're doing that in other areas, and of course, education is, some might say, the most important and crucial area where we need to do exactly that.
And as you said, digital education is the way.
Is the way. It's the way
There's
forward.
really no
There's
way
no
about it.
Yeah, quite.
So that's it. So what is it that we can do now? As it were, at this level? Yes, they've just helped 20 university students,
Quite.
but they've been doing this. So cumulatively, if you add up all of them, dozens by now, this sort of thing. That's it. But once it has become part of the structure.
Yeah, quite.
You know what I mean? It's part of the embedding of our education. That's really what we want.
Yeah.
Just as it said, connectivity all over the country, and every school be connected.
That's right. I mean, and I've said this, and people might remember, or they might be fed up of me hearing me say it, but my sister is a school administrator in Miami, Florida. And when COVID-19 happened, I don't know how many, 900 kids, they were all given laptops, and they did their lessons from home. We're nowhere near that, and we're not Miami. Yeah, we're not the USA. But this has to be the aim, this has to be the ambition, because as I say, we're digitizing all sorts of services. We're digitizing tax collection. We're digitizing the way we send money to each other, and all sorts of other things. I could be a doctor at Edward Francis Small. You don't have to physically send me x-rays. You could just email them, and so we're doing that. But this is probably the biggest thing that we're thinking of doing in this particular way.
Absolutely, and there's something significant, very, very important here. You see, when you go to certain schools, people with a certain income bracket, where they send their kids, in all likelihood, most of those people can afford to buy their kids laptops. And the school itself, because of the amount that people pay in fees, so you have all of that.
Sure.
So people, the privileged, those who sort of have the fortune to go to these privileged schools, they will get the right education, the relevant.
That's
Can you imagine today education without a digital element?
Yeah,
it is not. It is obsolete. So this is a new kid on the block. That sort of thing.
Sure.
But people in government schools, they wouldn't. Not many.
Yeah, quite.
You know
I
what I
remember
mean?
15 years ago when people were. A lecturer in India was giving lectures to kids in the United kingdom, and everyone, it's like 10, 15 years ago. You know,
Recently,
so,
a friend of mine, the daughter was receiving 2 lectures from somebody in Pakistan.
there you are. There you are. Yeah.
So this is it.
Yeah.
So this is why I think that this collaboration is absolutely crucial.
Indeed.
To cater to the masses,
Really,
so many people we wouldn't
to
can't
democratize
afford it.
education, as it were.
Absolutely, to help, as it were, this educational apartheid. One of James
and we mentioned
James
it before.
called it that,
quite.
educational apartheid.
Yeah.
So this is it. This is why I think that it is hugely significant. Sure. It will make a massive difference to so many people who can't afford it, and they stand the risk of being left behind. That's what you do not want.
We certainly don't, and let's hope that they'll put in sort of mechanisms to kind of make this a reality, because we desperately need it.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. That story, number 5, takes us to the break, and after the break we will have 5 more stories, so don't go away. Join us after this break.
Browse Bitus. QCell brings you a promo like never before. Get unlimited internet for just $25. Yes! Recharge $25 and enjoy the convenience of free internet from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. every day with our Browse with Us promo. With this amazing offer, you can browse, stream, and download all your favorite movies for free. So why wait? Recharge $25 today and enjoy free internet only with QCell between 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. For more information, call customer care on 111. QCell, Senior Bus, we innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome back. You are still watching, I hope, QTV, and you are still watching the Week in Review. And if you're joining at this juncture, you've missed 5 stories, but relax, we've got 5 good stories still to go. And I hope you'll agree with me. And still going through is Mohamed Mboj, and still signing we have Lamine D. Sonko. So story number 6, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger had announced that they were pulling out of ECOWAS and forming the Alliance of Sahel States. And they've gone ahead, and now on January 29th that became formal, when both sides agreed that this was the date when the break was made formal. But it's not all bad news. Why do I say that? This might tell you.
In Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, citizens celebrated the raising of the AES flag, symbolizing the new alliance next to the existing flags of the 3 nations, which they are all retaining. People took to the streets, dancing and clapping, expressing support for what they perceive as greater sovereignty and self-determination. Despite their departure, ECOWAS has taken steps to minimize disruptions. The bloc has instructed all member states to continue recognizing national passports and identity cards bearing the ECOWAS logo, allowing citizens of the 3 countries to travel, reside and trade without restrictions, at least for now. The withdrawal of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger has inevitably raised questions about ECOWAS stability and viability.
Mr. Mboj, I suppose because they're all Francophone countries, it's probably good that there's been some sort of rapprochement. You know, ECOWAS hasn't said go away and never darken our doors again. It's a kind of olive branch that they've held out by saying that there are certain things that can go on as before.
Yes, the passports, isn't it? Once it's got the ECOWAS logo, then you'll be allowed to move freely, even though your country, you've exited.
That's right. Because they have their own passport now that they've devised. So that passport won't get you into ECOWAS countries, but the old passport
will do so. And the 5,000 member military units that they've formed together to fight jihadism. And this is an interesting experiment.
It is, really.
Yes, is it negative or is it positive? You see, I'm not really quite sure.
I think it's too early to pass judgment yet.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's too early to say. Of course, the pro ECOWAS advocates, of course, will say, "Oh, this is a calamity.
It's the end of ECOWAS
the
type of
split.
thing. Yeah,
ECOWAS
quite.
is this the end? They've not been doing this." Then the criticisms have been piling on about all the shortcomings of ECOWAS and the like. But this is all part of the independence project. We are all still trying to find our feet.
Yeah, quite.
None of our states are really that stable. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Even politically, if you seem so, economically,
Okay,
you are just so vulnerable,
Well, yeah.
and this is how your economy can come to impact on the politics when military people take over and start citing the economic misery as the their reason for taking over.
Quite.
So this is really
and what you have, I mean, because we seem to have a lot of this in the kind of francophone countries, where a lot of them were still kind of handcuffed to France, particularly their currencies. And a lot of them had French military bases in their country. So we're now seeing all of that is kind of unraveling. You know, they're all saying, okay, it's been nice having you here, but goodbye. And of course, these three states, as we've said, it's too early to decide what. But interestingly, of course, we heard a Togolese foreign minister saying that I do not rule out the possibility of Togo joining the alliance of Sahel states. So that's kind of would have sent alarm bells, because you know, people might say, well, why do they feel the need that they need to join that alliance when they're already part of ECOWAS? So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And perhaps this also brought out perhaps the tension in ECOWAS that really there was never an opportunity for it to really to come to the fore. This Anglophone, Francophone sort of divide. Now we've seen what has happened, and attitudes are changing. There's a sea change really in the Francophone world. Even democratic Senegal
have asked the French to leave, the French troops who've been there for decades.
Yes, and then what did Ouattara also do? Perhaps to forestall any reaction, because could see that
this was building.
This is this regional wave that's been building up. So perhaps this is a turning moment. So I do not necessarily see the split as something bad. We do not know it. Perhaps it's good. It shows that the unit is dynamic. Things are moving.
And it could be a wake-up call, because ECOWAS might investigate itself and say, okay, why did it come to this? How did it come to this? Is there something we could have done better? Could we have taken a different stance? Did we push them into it? Or did they jump before we pushed them? So, you know, all of those would be part of the argument, won't they?
And is this possibly a foretaste of what might happen with the EU? We don't touch that. We haven't touched that yet. True. But still, one can just imagine something like that. Some breakaway, and then whatever it might lead to. So this is it. We'll see how things pan out, and even with the military men, how would they handle this jihadism, this insurgency? We've been following the news, and in certain countries, Burkina Faso, there appears to have been more attacks.
That's right.
This is really extremely difficult. It's easier when you are not in government. You think that you can do it until you get into government, and then what? And even with this AES, well, yes, this generation, those people were happy they came out clapping, maybe they wanted, but perhaps after a bad experience, who knows, 5 years, 10 years time, you can have them wanting to come back.
Yeah, quite.
So we really cannot tell
we
much.
saw what happened when Traoré went for Mahama's inauguration, to the extent that Mahama commented on it. He said, oh, you seem to be very popular with the applause that he got when he was announced. So, but we'll see, because, you know, now it's all shiny and new, and it looks like, you know, the world is their oyster, but time will tell, really.
Yes, because the expectations are so high.
Yeah, quite.
But we know the difficulties of power, especially when you rule in, you know, such countries. That's it. Such countries as Guinea, Mali, or Burkina Faso. You know, problems, economic issues all over the place. So it will be interesting to see, and the patience for how long before the people start turning on them
and demanding more. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And now on to story number 7. The Gambia Police and the Fire Service personnel recently conducted some emergency response training, and they graduated. What's emergency response training? Who's it matter to? Have a look, have a listen.
Officers also received training and certification in various other areas, including gender and child welfare, as well as techniques for rescuing individuals involved in road traffic accidents and administering first aid to victims when needed. Violeta Insa is Spain's ambassador to the Gambia.
Today will enable you to better protect people, especially vulnerable women and children in tourism areas, and also save lives in road accidents, in wells, in fire.
Since 2023, Startup, in collaboration with the government of Spain, has provided over 3 million euros worth of firefighting equipment, including trucks, ambulances, uniforms, and medical supplies to the fire service. This vital support has greatly enhanced the ability of firefighters to carry out emergency rescue operations without delays or difficulties. Sanko Lindau is the Chief Fire Officer of the Gambia.
This specialized training, focusing on defensive driving techniques, vehicle maintenance, advanced well rescue techniques, and road traffic collisions management, represent a transformational leap in our capacity to deliver effective and efficient emergency services.
Emergency rescue operations demand significant resources as well as the right training and expertise, including specialized vehicles and equipment. Therefore, the donated equipment, vehicles, and training will not only strengthen the fire rescue department's operations capacity, but also contribute to life saving.
I think what's important about this is that we've seen instances where there have been donated vehicles to various services, naming no names, and then they kind of sit there and they rust. But now, as part of the element of it, as well as donated vehicles, there's training to maintenance those vehicles. Something that, for me, that was one of the most important and significant things that came out of the training. I know the whole of it is significant, but that one stood out for me.
Yes, but can you imagine an NGO to come from Spain to teach us how to maintain some.
Well, this is it. Although there's, I think it's kind of inspired by Gambians, by the way, living in Spain, who formed the NGO.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see, the problem, and will show us really why we need this kind of training. We had a member of the Red Cross the other day, and then he put certain things in context for me. He said, actually, when it comes to RTA, road traffic accidents, we are about 17th or 18th.
Yeah.
But when it comes to deaths resulting from road traffic accidents, that's where we are fourth.
Yeah.
So that tells you that post-accident care,
sure.
it is woeful.
Yeah, quite.
So a lot of people really give you long-term injuries. When you have an accident, people do not know. So they should actually go beyond the police.
Yeah.
There must be a mass sensitization, if you like, program for people to get some sense that when somebody's in an accident, be careful. You just come and
start moving them.
Start moving them.
Yeah.
That could be the the terrible thing to do, the worst option, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So yes, this is absolutely important, and this must be much, much bigger and continuous.
Sure.
After 2 weeks, yes, they will get the basic concepts and the like, but that training must continue.
It's never
and it's not simply that knowing the expertise, what you do, having the right kind of attitude.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
We know exactly what is wrong with what we do, and in 2 weeks, obviously, you cannot deal with that.
Quite.
But that is absolutely crucial to training. Competence. What is competence? Skills, knowledge, and attitude. This is what we are told. So without the attitude, it has been a massive deficiency. Really, it's a deficit in us. Then you're not going to see what you need to say.
Yeah. So let's hope that it's, as you said, it has to be continuous. It must be.
It has to.
Thank you for that. And now on to a subject which I'm sure will bring a smile to the face of Mr. Mboj. National sensitization on tobacco control. We're here again. Not sure how much time we'll spend on this one, but have a look, have a listen to this.
Tobacco Control Act of 2016 regulates tobacco use. The legislation bans tobacco advertising, promotion and sponsorship, restricts the sale of tobacco products, designates smoke-free areas and enforces regulations on tobacco packaging and labeling. The law also prohibits the sale of tobacco to minors with the legal age for possessing tobacco set at 18. The current national sensitization campaign is designed to raise awareness about the act and assess the level of compliance among tobacco importers and consumers nationwide. However, compliance and enforcement are both lacking.
It is dangerous to our environment. It is even dangerous to our newly born babies. Because once you smoke, the smoke disperses. And anybody who inhales it, you eventually catch up with the impact of smoking. So I think, generally speaking, in general terms, tobacco smoking is dangerous.
Mr. Mboj, the reason I was kind of smiling before is because we've kind of been here before.
Yes.
And it's almost a losing battle, because you get the suspicion that unless you had these kind of draconian rules about hiding it away, changing the packaging and so on, that people would smoke as much as they ever did. And so it seems as if the battle has been lost in the kind of health thing, saying to people, it's bad to smoke. And so people smoke, and now you say, okay, we're coming up, they're going to change the designs on the packets and so on, because, as I said, it feels like a battle that has been lost, really.
Yes, I'm listening to that gentleman, and I keep thinking, everything you're saying, everybody knows.
Yeah.
People know.
Yeah.
Do you think that people smoke because they really do not know? I mean, by now, the campaign's been on for years and
30
years and
now.
years.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. Yes, Ade, in our age now, smoking, you know, the health sort of lobby, there's a new sort of consciousness of health, be it in food and all the sort of stuff we do. But I'm still a libertarian. People with adults, well, you tell them the risks.
But that's why he mentioned babies who have no...
That's it, but now people are sort of more aware that
of
you cannot
secondary
smoke
around
where people
children.
Right,
And
that's it.
sure.
So you move away from that.
Sure.
But basically, I'm a libertarian. Fine, you have your smoke-free areas, granted. But this is it. You think anybody really cares about that anymore for some reason?
Yeah.
You know, one shouldn't have been able to smoke in restaurants and stuff. But you're never going to have the owner come and say, no, you cannot do that.
Yeah, quite.
Stuff
Exactly.
like that.
Quite.
So it's difficult to enforce when really there's no general consensus amongst the people.
Exactly.
So people still smoke.
People still smoke.
It's just unbelievable. That's a tough battle there they have.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. And on to story number 9. It's again, this is quite a serious one. It's about combating illicit proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Do we have a problem with that in the Gambia? Well, perhaps we do. And when we come back, after you've seen this, you might realize why.
It's important to emphasize and encourage synergy of action between the United Nations country team, UNREC, the National Commission, and national partners for the implementation of the United Nations programs of action on small arms and light weapons.
To achieve these objectives, we must continue working tirelessly and collaboratively at all levels by all actors to implement effective measures to combat the illicit proliferation of small arms and light weapons.
Mr. Mboj, we don't have much time on the last 2 stories, but I said recently we've seen, I'm not sure we could call it a spate, but we've seen incidents where small arms and light arms have been used in robberies here in the Gambia. And so all of a sudden this is no longer just a thing that we sign up to this convention. It's something that is happening here and that we need to deal with. We're talking about the proliferation of them, obviously, but you know, I'm not sure 3 or 4 incidents amounts to a proliferation necessarily.
Absolutely. And that just really shows the importance of this kind of meeting there, really, was it to help them develop a national action plan. There's still a long way to go. But you are right, in recent time, in recent periods, we've been hearing attacks, you know, involving firearms, as it were, people using that. And I can tell you, throughout when I was younger, Maybe the only time really we heard firearms when it was around was the aborted coup 1981.
Right.
Apart from that, with people, it wasn't like that. But things are changing. Absolutely, we must tackle this now.
Sure, sure.
Really, because potentially what it can be, you know, now things have just changed. We've become more violent, and we watch things on social media or on TV, and we see things being done elsewhere. Then you want to do it as well.
Sure.
So yes.
Yeah, and you know, definitely one that is a very, very important one to keep an eye on. And thank you for that. And this brings us to our final story, and this time it will be a short one. Why will it be a short one? Well, when you see the subject and you hear the story, you know why it's going to be short, especially for Gambians. Have a look, have a listen.
And the stage is set for an unforgettable tournament. Although their team failed to make it, Gambian football fans will doubtless tune in as the continent cheers up for what promises to be an epic football showdown.
We will tune in, Mr. Mboj, as we used to tune in before we qualified, not once but twice. And we kind of got kind of complacent and thought it was our birthright to qualify. And then we got the nasty shock. We haven't qualified for the next AFCON, Mr. Mboj, but his party is going to go on.
Absolutely, and what we saw the last AFCON is that African football now is very interesting.
Quite.
So that's for that reason I think we will tune in. Things have moved on.
The romantic way of Cote d'Ivoire sacking their coach and then you know,
look at what happened. Absolutely, and even on the pitch.
Quite.
You know, it used to be so slow and laboured. Now it's exciting, dynamic. We're high scores in a good number of them. So yes, we went consecutively twice. We missed for 2026. So what? We'll get back to the drawing board and do better next time.
Absolutely, and the games must go on.
The games must go on. It's just a matter of now who's going to win. You know, Morocco hosting it. That could be interesting. I'm sure we're going to be one of the favorites.
And Cote d'Ivoire drawn in the same group as Cameroon.
Yes, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon. What a rivalry.
Quite.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And as I said, we will be tuning in. And thank you for your interjections throughout. And thank you to you, Lamindi Sonko, for your signing. And of course, to you, the viewers, thank you for watching. Until we come your way again next week. Bye.